All right, folks, I'm about to compare the Aziak Frontcountry to the Outdoorsmans Carbon Innegra, and then tell you a story detailing why I will never use one of these tripods again for the rest of my life. Now, before we get into the details, let's look at the overview. Cost. Aziak comes in at $350 US. Outdoorsmans comes in at $1,400 US. To be clear, both of these are carbon fiber tripods of standing height. They vary a little bit, but they are both the tall versions from their respective companies. Collapsed, the Aziak comes in at 22 inches and the Outdoorsmans at 21.5 inches. Fully extended, Aziak 67 inches, the Outdoorsmans a little bit shorter at 63 1/4. They weigh the exact same thing. 2 pounds, 6 ounces with no pan head, and their base setup the way you see them in front of you here today. The only difference to that is there is a tripod holster on the Outdoorsmans that might weigh an extra couple ounces that we'll get into shortly. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there is not a functional difference in the carbon fiber technologies used. It's really hard to decipher the marketing jargon on carbon fiber. Everybody kind of claims they're using the next generation carbon fiber, layering and laminating techniques and all the rest of it. I've spoke with both companies. They both seem to be using very high-end carbon fiber technologies from standing positions and seating positions in real-world glassing scenarios. I could not notice any visible difference in the shake or the vibration. I haven't heard any differences in the durability of the material. So I think for all intents and purposes, we can consider the carbon fiber on these two tripods basically equal. I just got back from a 12-day goat hunt. I had a partner with me, Vance, for the first half, and then I was solo for the second half. Both of us used both tripods extensively. I had a pair of NL Pure 12x42s, a pair of Sig Zulu 10 15 powers, and my Swaro ATX 85. We glassed from a combination of, seated, standing, kind of everything in between. And I feel like we adequately put both of these tripods through their paces in a fair and objective manner. Before I get into what I like and what I don't like, I have to share a piece of really big news. I just launched Mindful Hunter Outfitting. I am now offering archery, Alberta, mule deer hunts, and any weapon spring bear hunts in British Columbia. I put out a launch video. You can go watch it right here. I'm only offering 10 hunts next year, 4 mule deer hunts and 6 bear hunts. All of those hunts will be one-on-one. I have a guide helping me in Alberta. I will be guiding all of the black bear hunts. I think I have the ability to offer something really unique with Mindful Hunter Outfitting by catering the style and the goal of the hunt to the actual skill level and goals of the hunter themselves individually. So each hunt will be kind of crafted to meet what that hunter is hoping to achieve out of that hunt, whether it be the size of animal, the type of adventure, the time spent in the backcountry, whatever. There's a lot of different options. I go over the details of all the hunts, the pricing in that video. Feel free to go watch that first. If you're interested, there is early booking discounts available until October 1st. After that, they go up to full price. Jay@mindfulhunter.com. I can answer all your questions. If you're interested, drop me a line and let me help you build your next Canadian hunting adventure. All right, let's start with the Aziak. Now, what are some of the things that I like about this tripod? For starters, it has a detachable center post, which is unbelievably useful if you are looking to shoot prone. So there's actually, it's not in here right now, I left it in the other room, but the hook that goes on the bottom of the center post actually unscrews and has an Allen head attachment on it for field servicing almost all of the components on the tripod. And you remove this top head piece here and you reach down into the center post and you can detach kind of the bottom 90% of the center post and you're just left with a 4-inch attachment, which means you can basically put the tripod out flat, either for glassing laying down on a skyline, which can be really helpful, or shooting from a prone position. I'm just diving headlong into my long range kind of hunting journey, and shooting prone is something that I'm extremely interested in working on. And the fact that this tripod allows you to do that in the field and then put the center post right back on so you can go back to using it and giving yourself more flexibility for glassing purposes is a big feature in my opinion. Further to that, this center post has a concave design. So it's basically a triangle with kind of concave sides. Now, what that means is that when you compress this tripod fully, all 3 sides pack up extremely tight and efficient, and there's no wiggle, nothing moving around, the legs don't move, it's completely silent. Another really great design feature. Up top here, you have a built-in level. And I didn't actually realize how handy this would be until I had one. I think this is the first backcountry tripod I've ever owned that has one. Now that Aziak put it on one, I'm kind of like, why don't all tripods have this? It certainly can't cost that much. I mean, it's a very small little, attachment that they've just simply embedded in the metal there at the top of the legs, but super handy. Something else I found very interesting, when you unscrew this cap here, you can actually swap out this bolt. You can flip it upside down, and then it gives you the ability to have 3/8, 16, and 1/4 20 mounting studs. So depending what you're putting on the top of it, and again, that's field serviceable. You use the kind of hidden key that comes with it. You take out one set screw in the side, unspin this top, flip it over, spin it back in, re-put the set screw back in, you are good to go. So I think that's super handy. Also comes with the kind of standard panhead set screw. So when you tighten on your panhead, you extend this set screw that bites into the bottom of the panhead and it stops your panhead from moving or unscrewing on you. Now, what am I not such a fan of about this one? Spin locks are what spin locks are. They're not my favorite in the world. They do tend to be prone to break. Now, I've had several Aziak tripods and I've never actually had them break. So I can say that at least the ones they have are fairly durable. There's always that slight moment of confusion when you're like, am I turning this the right? Am I tightening it? Am I loosening it? So I will say that the leg locks themselves are not my favorite, but up until this point, they have performed very well for me. The leg angle locks are also, I wouldn't say annoying, but they could be improved upon slightly. I'd like to see them be spring loaded. Also, when you have the leg fully extended, there's pressure on it and you can't extend it. So you kind of have to put it back in. You pull out this attachment, then you lift it up a little bit, put it back in until you hear the click, and then you can get up into the next position. And if you want to go to the third position, same thing, lift, extend, lift, depress, and come all the way up. So you have 1, 2, and 3. And there is a spring-loaded element there. The spring-loaded part must be activated by the different angles. So it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. It works on the way down nicely, not so nicely on the way up. But these are, they're just not my favorite. I think that those could be improved upon slightly just for a better user experience, but they don't inhibit the performance of the tripod at all. So yeah, that's where we're at with the Aziak. I really liked it. A little more stable than the Backcountry Light because the legs have a greater diameter. It's also a little bit heavier, so that in itself gives it more stability. Overall, it performed exceptionally well. Let's move on to the Outdoorsmans. Now, what do I like? For starters, we'll talk about this feature that's not even necessarily a part of the tripod, and you got to buy it additionally. They call this the tripod holster. And what it is basically is an Arca Swiss or an Outdoorsman's adapter plate that you can slide things into. So think if you're running a pair of binoculars and you have an Arca binocular adapter on the bottom of your binoculars, you could have them on your tripod. You could remove the binoculars. You can slide the Arca attachment in here while you put your spotting scope back on here. So it saves you putting your binoculars on the ground, risk damaging them that way, having to always be putting them in and out of your binocular harness on your chest. I can't say I used it all that much, to be honest with you. I think it's a really cool feature. It's a great way to add some extra stability by adding some weight to one of the tripod legs. Again, it only weighs, I don't even know, man, like 1 to 2 ounces. So there's almost a non-existent weight penalty for having it there. So I think it's a cool feature, but like I say, I didn't really use it that much. Up next, the hallmark of the Outdoorsman's design are these field serviceable leg locks. In my opinion, they're some of the best in tripod design. You can adjust tension, you can completely take them apart and put them back together in the field, which you cannot do with spin locks. I have had Outdoorsman's tripods going on 7 years, and the first one I ever bought, the compact medium, is still in perfect working order, and the leg locks still work extremely well. So that I really enjoy. Also, the leg lock angle adjustment on here. See, if we go out to full extension, you can still depress this and bring it up to the next one. It's fully spring loaded at each adjustment period. And it just has kind of a more elegant, user experience than the slightly clunkier ones on the Aziak. So I would say that the Outdoorsman's has superior leg angle adjustment and leg lock adjustment. Let's get into some of the things that I don't like about this tripod. You will notice there is no set screw on the attachment for your pan head. We're going to get into this and why this is a pretty big deal in a moment. Also, see this threaded bolt here that your pan head goes on? There is nothing stopping this bolt from being screwed all the way in or all the way out. So it could just come unscrewed and fall on the ground. Or if you go to put it in and you don't leave enough of this hanging out, or you don't recognize that as you're spinning on your pan head, it doesn't bite right away, you could have your pan head only hanging on by a couple threads. I'm not really sure why there isn't a stopper in there, or why there isn't some kind of lock. Like with the Aziak, this is locked in there. You cannot get it out. You have to undo a set screw, remove this attachment, and then you can take this out. And until you do that, you cannot lose this, and it does not come out. Whereas this one, it's confusing to me why you wouldn't have added that additional functionality, and same with the set screw. It would have taken very little to just drill a hole in here and literally have a threaded screw that came through here that you could have adjusted by lifting this up, having a little bit of extra room here, and then just using an Allen wrench to adjust the set screw from beneath. Following that, this attachment mechanism here, I've kind of complained to Outdoorsman's about this before. So basically, this is a wing nut that is attached to a threaded bolt, but it's just attached through pressure. So if you back this all the way out and then just keep cranking, this just spins right off. So if you hit that or got caught on something in the field, you could lose that. I asked them about this before and they said you should apply some Loctite. I would argue that's insufficient design. If you know this comes off regularly, A, why wasn't it shipped with Loctite? And B, I don't understand the benefit of having this be a two-piece mechanism. Why would you just not have this wing nut kind of permanently affixed to this threaded bolt, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it coming undone? What happened to me before is that I left a tripod over winter and it got seized. And so when I tried to get the wing nut off, it just kept unthreading because obviously you tighten it like this, but when you go to untighten it, the same thread pattern untightens the wing nut from the threaded bolt. So I still don't have a rational explanation why this is a two-piece system. I'd be interested to hear more from Outdoorsmans. Maybe I'm missing something on this. Yeah, but the fact that you can lose it or it can get stuck, and then if it does get seized, the wing nut, if it doesn't have enough grip, you just keep unscrewing the wing nut from the threaded bolt instead of unscrewing the threaded bolt from creating a tight adhesion to the center post. Now, further to that would be the center post itself. So there is no way to adjust or shorten this center post. And there's a bit of a cotter pin here, not a cotter pin, but there's like a seal, an O-ring around the bottom that stops you from sliding it out. Now you could use a pair of pliers and take that out, but there's not even a separate mechanism that would be just a head. Like for example, they could have just shipped this with like a 2-inch head that would lock in here, that then you could have decided which center post you wanted to use. And if you wanted to lie prone, you could have used that secondary attachment, but the tripod did not come with that. So it's physically impossible to shoot prone with this tripod. And in fact, the length of the center post kind of takes you out right to the first, I guess, angle adjustment on the leg. So this would be as low as you can shoot with this tripod, which again is a bit of a miss for me. And having the center be round, unlike the concave of the Aziak, when you close this, it doesn't really close tight. Like see how there's flex in these legs? And the diameter of the tripod itself doesn't actually pack up as small. Now it's a marginal difference, but it is a difference, especially when you start to include the additional kind of girth of these leg locks. Like it's noticeable when you put this one in your pack, it takes up much less room and it doesn't kind of have these bulky knobs, sticking out of the fabric, giving you wear and friction points on the side pockets of your backpack. They do have telescoping options for the center post. So if you wanted to take this even higher or make it even taller, you can buy an additional telescoping centerpiece. They run for about $250 US. Okay, so if you can't tell already, I'm leaning towards the Aziak as being the superior option for me personally, because right now there are several features that the Aziak offers that the Outdoorsmans doesn't offer, and there's nothing that the Outdoorsmans does that the Aziak doesn't do. And the Aziak's $350 and the Outdoorsmans is $1,400. So it's not really a difficult decision. And now let me share with you what happened to me on my goat hunt, which kind of puts the Outdoorsmans in a deal breaker category for me. On day 4 of our goat hunt, we spotted a big billy. We dropped down into this drainage. Long story short, turned into one of the most terrible hikes of my life. It was just an absolute death march. Extremely thick slide alder, devil's club, steep pitches, incised creeks, like every single thing you can imagine going wrong did go wrong. Now, I had the Outdoorsmans on the outside of my pack. Very common to stick the legs in kind of the stretchy bottom pocket, right? And then have a strap come around the top of your tripod here and leave your tripod on the outside of your pack. I've done that, and I've also carried it in the side pocket. But when you start getting these tall tripods that you can stand with and then attaching a tripod, a pan head on top, it starts getting to be quite a snug fit trying to get it in that side pocket. Now it does just fit on the XO 7200, but it was kind of a pain to get in and out, so I had it on the outside. So I'm hiking and I'm hiking and I'm hiking, and all of a sudden I look over my shoulder at my hunting partner and I see this exposed threaded bolt. And I'm like, wait a minute, I should be looking at my pan head, not the threaded bolt. So what had happened, now I had my pan head cranked, right? And the tricky thing about tightening a pan head on is you have to lock down the panning function, and you can only spin it so hard because eventually you're gonna reef on it and start to wear out that panning lock, but the pan was locked and that thing was cranked on. It hadn't moved in 4 days with multiple different optics, multiple different camp moves, all kinds of stuff. But because there's no set screw on the face of this pan head attachment, there's nothing other than the friction holding the pan head on. So as I was walking through that vegetation, even though the pan head handle was angled down, I'm assuming a branch caught the pan head handle, started to unscrew it, and just the more I walked through the bush and the more time it got grabbed, it literally just unscrewed itself and dumped itself somewhere in the brush. It's gone, never to be found again. So number one, that's a deal breaker for me. I lost a pan head on a hunt. Now luckily, we were headed out that day, back to the truck. I had some spare gear. It didn't kill the hunt. Deal breaker number two, what if this bolt had fallen out? Like there's nothing holding this in here. So once the pan head is off, this could literally just, unscrew itself through vibration, through vegetation, whatever. And some people are going to say, well, carry the pan head separately. And it's like, I don't know a single person on the planet that puts their pan head on their tripod every time they sit down to glass. But if they did, then you're also telling me I have to carry this separately. So now I have two things that I could lose while hunting that would theoretically shut my hunt down if I couldn't find them or if I lost them. Deal breaker number three, the center post. The fact that you can't shoot prone with a $1,400 tripod just doesn't work for me. So that was a big learning lesson for me. I got to be honest, I've never placed that much value in a set screw. Like I thought they were useful. I've tightened them as often as I can remember tightening them. But until this particular hunt, I didn't really recognize what a mission critical function they served until I completely lost a panhead just walking out of the bush. So unfortunately for me, there's a few too many deal breaker elements on the Outdoorsman, so I won't be taking it back into the bush and I can't recommend it for purchase at this time in its current version. Now, something else I would like to note, both of these are standing tripods. I've never taken a standing tripod on a backcountry hunt. Aziak calls this the Frontcountry for a very clear reason. I won't be taking a standing tripod on a backcountry hunt again. I think the newer generation of ultralight tripods that are kind of like borderline seated tripods, like they're obviously not tall enough to stand, but they're not so short that you can't like sit on a rock and still get your optics up to you. I think the backcountry light from Aziak is kind of an exact example of that's a perfect backcountry tripod for glassing for me. So I don't need the ability to stand. Here's the deal. In real world circumstances, in the backcountry, in the mountains, in the wind, with 15s or an 85 spotter, when you're glassing things 3, 4, 5 miles away, the wind and vibration interference that's introduced by standing your tripod all the way up, it just doesn't make it a usable device. So you always find yourself coming back down to get it out of the wind and to get a more stable position so that you get a more reliable viewing experience with less vibration and shake. Now, the other thing, I originally set out on this review to test like a super high-end tripod against a value-based option and see which one was better. Unfortunately, I've come to the conclusions that the Outdoorsman's was the wrong option. And so I think the real high-end tripod that needs to be tested, because right now, Aziak is kind of winning most of my tripod comparison videos. They just have the feature sets that I like, the durability, the level of thought and engineering that Rydell puts into things by hiding the Allen key in the hook, having the detachable center post, letting you flip between two different thread patterns on this bolt. Like, the Outdoorsman's does none of that. And it costs over $1,000 more. I don't understand if you spent all that money, why couldn't you have added a similar feature set? But it's that kind of ingenious engineering that keeps bringing me back to Aziak. But I have a couple die-hard mountain hunting buddies that go on and on about the RRS Ascend, and I think it's really the pinnacle of a high-end mountain hunting tripod. So I'm going to do my best to get my hands on one of those, because I do think that for certain, shooting scenarios and other elements, there might be an argument to spend that kind of money on a tripod. And for myself, I need to see what a tripod like that brings to the table that Aziak is unable to for $350. Logically, I don't expect the Aziak to be as good as the RRS. How could you be with that price difference? What I'd like to be able to quantify is, does the difference in quality justify the difference in price? Like, if you're going to spend 6 times more money, is it 6 times more tripod, or are you only getting like an extra 10 or 15%? And like with optics, sometimes that's enough for people with disposable income to justify the price. But for other people looking for a value-based option, it's nice to know that you're getting close to that premium performance for a much more reasonable entry price. All right, folks, there you have it. My comparison to the two tripods. Remember, this is all my opinion, so if you prefer the Outdoorsmans or you've already bought it, I hope this doesn't irritate you too much. If it works for you, that's all that counts. It was, again, just my experience with these two pieces of gear. If you guys could engage with this content in any way, shape, or form, like, comment, share, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.